Welcome everybody to Business Insights on Monday, the 26th of April, 2021. Where some parts of the country enjoy a public holiday, those in the states of New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania unfortunately do not. So Business Insights is a very exciting webinar series hosted weekly on Mondays at midday by a panel of industry thought leaders for business owners who simply want to be in the know about the latest and most significant news and initiatives in the Australian business landscape that impact how they do business. Our panel of advisors aim to inform, educate, and provide strategic insight to the changes in the economic, legislative, and financial landscape that affects small business. We aim to guide our viewers to navigate the challenges that COVID-19 throws up and then guide them. Sorry, my computer has frozen, so I will start there again. We aim to guide viewers through COVID-19 and beyond. I should also provide the following general warning that the views and opinions shared on this webinar are designed to be for general information only and are not designed to be taken as specific advice for your personal or specific circumstances. Please feel free to reach out to any panel member for specific advice to meet your requirements. So let's now meet our panel of industry thought leaders. First up, we have Lisa Garrido from Enigma HR.
Hi. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I'm here in Adelaide, where I'm the only one working.
Thanks, Lisa. And Sam Qureshi from Moneycliff Private Wealth.
Hello, everybody, and great to be on board.
And Adam Lyle from BizDoctor.
G'day, Ian, and let's have a moment of remembrance for all the diggers yesterday.
Absolutely. And my name is Ian McLaughlin from Imperium Accounting and Tax. So we might start with you today, Sam, because I know that you've probably got a lot to go through. So over to you. If you just unmute Sam.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I wanted to just start by saying that rates continue to remain steady at the moment in those high ones to mid twos for the fixed rates for owner occupiers. Mid to high twos for variable rates. These are based on occupier principal and interest repayments. From that, interest-only rates or investment rates are slightly higher. What we are seeing is, in particular, pretty bad bank service levels at the moment. They continue to blow out and disappoint many borrowers, which is a shame in this age of high tech, basically. I personally used to get loans approvals done much quicker when everything was faxed to the banks some 15 years ago, versus all the electronics and all the technology today, and it taking far greater time than it did back then. So it's interesting. Even then, you had to literally enter everything in bit by bit yourself. Now, auction results had yet another strong week across the board, averaging well over 80% clearances, with the exception of Queensland at 76 and WA with a lockdown at 0. Interestingly enough, for the first time in a while, Ian, while I'm now reading that a number of properties going on the market for sale starting to climb, which is good. I guess this is an early set of numbers, but significant if it continues to form a trend, since higher numbers of properties for sale will probably bring a better balance between the supply and demand that we're seeing at the moment. Currently, there's significant demand and not enough supply. So that means that even though RBA is expecting prices to continue to increase over the next 2 to 3 years, the rate for which they increase may somewhat moderate. And I guess that's good for home buyers in particular, and many who are getting disappointed right now in this, what you would regard as a very hot market. And as mentioned before, it is hard to know when this all boom finishes, whether we will see a plateau or a decline in prices. I guess time will tell about that, and we'll wait and see how that goes. But Lisa, last week you asked me to share some data about how the property market has been going. So I thought I'll talk through this particular item, which might be very useful for everybody. As you can see, I've just picked a 12-month number as probably the most relevant number. And as you can see, pretty much every state has had a very strong growth in the last 12 months. Surprisingly, where Lisa is right now at 9.8%, that's pretty strong. And same as Brisbane, Gold Coast, with the people moving to those slightly more regional areas of southern Queensland. And as you can see, if you look at it on a very different way, Perth is the only state that is still down from the 2012 previous high, and obviously since 2017. So overall, as you can see, very strong growth, in particular in Sydney. Since essentially 9 years ago, you could say that would be like one normal property cycle, where properties have grown by 90% in Sydney, 64% in Melbourne, and somewhat about a third in Brisbane and Adelaide, and obviously Perth is still down compared to that. So amazing set of data, and of course what you would see is I've got some information. This is courtesy of CoreLogic and NAB. About what's happened to the Melbourne lockdowns as well, like, you know, in those particular periods that has defined the property market in the last few months in particular. Interestingly enough, if you look at this past 3 months, a lot of the increases come from that particular period. So coming back from Christmas, basically the market has gone somewhat crazy, that's for sure. We'll certainly provide you some more updates in due course. Now, of course, Australian
Thanks,
market.
Sam. That's phenomenal. Thank you, Sam. That's phenomenal. Thank you.
No worries. No worries. Now, moving on to the stock market, it was a flat week last week. Not much happened. We had some growth on Monday. We hit a post February 2020 high momentarily, but it's done nothing since. Now we've seen some downgrades of high performers in the last 12 months as well. And so they've come out saying that they're not necessarily going to be able to maintain the unbelievable increases that they experienced in the last 12 months. So they'll start to flow through, and it might make some investors think what else is out there that, you know, is going to slow down because of the uniqueness of last year's situation. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see the run to the end of June for that. Talking about end of June, so last week I touched base on the prepaid interest. So this week I thought I'll touch base on another component that is also very important for you to take into account running into the end of financial year. And I'll start with what's called concessional contribution cap. So this is the amount that you can put in pre-tax in your super. So financial 2021, this cap is up to 25,000 and is adjusted to 27,500 from July 1. Now, this is basically your pre-tax contributions. It's taxed at 15% if your income is less than 250K, or 30% if higher. Now, these tax savings are achieved if your marginal tax rate essentially is higher than those numbers. So, you know, if you pay 30% tax and your marginal, you know, and basically you can have an income of less than 250, essentially you're saving 50% tax on what goes into super on your behalf. If you have the highest marginal tax rate, you're saving 15% based on that 30. So in relation to to this, obviously the superannuation guarantees paid by your employers count towards this cap. Any amount that you salary sacrifice up to that value also can be counted. I should say that with salary sacrificing, the program needs to be in place before a salary sacrifice payment is made, and your employer should allow it as well, because not all employers will necessarily allow a salary sacrificing arrangement. Now, you can also be part of what's called personal concessional contributions paid by self-employed or even some employees. Now, this option requires you to put in paperwork or what's called notice of deduction to your super fund prior to doing your tax return. And this is really important, because if you don't do it in that order, put the paperwork in, then do your tax return, then you can't claim as a deduction. So very important for everyone to take that into account. And I'm sure if you go and see Ian after you've done that, the vice versa, as in incorrectly, yeah, there's nothing you can do about it, unfortunately. Now, there is a new rule that came out as of 1st of July 2019. It's called carry forward rule. So for those who haven't used that cap of 25,000 in a particular year, that can be made up for the next 5 years by way of catch up. After 5 years, those catch up periods will expire on a rolling 5-year basis. And this is on the basis that your super balance is, as at the 30th of June of the prior year, is less than $500,000. So for those who fit that mold and have the cash flow and can do that, this is a really great way for you to make up some extra super contributions and get that balance higher. So then you're more ready for your retirement. And with that, it's back to you, Ian.
Thanks very much, Sam. I'm going to touch again on just some of those and reiterate some of those points that you made when I talk. But we might now go to Lisa, who's enjoying, or not so much enjoying, the public holiday in South Australia. Lisa, what's news from your end of the world?
Okay, thanks, Ian. So today I just wanted to talk on the changes to the Fair Work Act, in particular in relation to casual employment. And next week, I'm going to talk about changes to the Fair Work Act in relation to parental leave. So on the 26th of March this year, the Fair Work Act was amended to change some of the workplace rights and obligations for casual employees. And I think it's really important that our viewers take note of this. This information is accessible in fairwork.gov.au. However, I just wanted to highlight, some of the areas that you need to be aware of, so that you can then proceed to do a bit more research and ask your HR professionals, consultants, or HR managers for assistance here. So in terms of the summary of what's changed, the first point is that casual employment information statement. I'm going to refer to it as CEIS. So employers have to give every new casual employee a casual employment information statement. This is accessible, downloadable in fairwork.gov.au as soon as possible, or immediately after they start the new job. So for small business employers, you need to give the existing casual employees that you have now a copy of the CEIS as soon as possible after the 27th of March. And other employers have to give their existing casual employees a copy of the CEIS as soon as possible after the 27th of September. Again, this is a downloadable document. So for those of us who don't know what the casual employee information statement refers to, or what it talks about a few things. The first one is defining who is a casual employee. It also talks about when an employee has to offer what we now call a casual conversion. That's in HR terms, temporary to permanent offers. Or when an employer doesn't have to offer a casual conversion, when a casual employee can request casual conversion, and the casual conversion entitlements of employees employed by small business employers, and the role of the Fair Work Commission to deal with disputes about casual conversions. So this is what is in the Casual Employment Information Statement. For employers, it is worth having a copy of this in your employee handbook or your policies and procedures handbook, if you have one. The next change in the Fair Work Act in relation to casual employees is it's finally clarified and defined what a casual employee is. Under the new definition, a person is a casual employee if they accept a job offer from an employer knowing that there is no firm advanced commitment to ongoing work with an agreed pattern of work, and they accept the offer knowing that there is no firm advanced commitment to become a permanent employee. Okay, so for example, if an employee is employed as a casual, the roster might change every week to suit the employer's needs, and also the employee or the casual employee can refuse or swap shifts that they could that would benefit them. That is your classic definition of what a casual employee is. So to work out if the employer's offer doesn't include a firm advance commitment, so again, these are conditions that employers must be aware of so that you don't fall into this trap and there's a dispute about the employee wanting a casual conversion. So firstly, the employer can choose to offer the employee hours of work, and it's the employee's choice to work or not. That's the first thing. Secondly, the employee will be offered hours of work when the business needs them to work. That's what a casual is all about, right? The employment is described as casual, is the third. The employee is paid a casual loading. It's a higher rate of pay for being a casual employee, or a specific pay rate for casual employees as prescribed in the modern awards. Again, you need to have knowledge of the role and which modern award the role applies to. Okay, so just as a reminder, how is the casual different to full-time or part-time? So full-time and part-time employees have an advanced commitment to ongoing employment. They can expect to work regular hours each week, and they're also entitled paid leave and must give or receive notice at the end of their employment. Okay? Just having a regular pattern of work doesn't mean an employee is permanent or full-time or part-time. They must be paid the leave entitlement and receive notice to end the employment. So under the National Employment Standards, casual employees are entitled now to access to a pathway to become a permanent employee. They're entitled to 2 days unpaid carers leave and 2 days unpaid compassionate leave per occasion, and entitled to 5 days unpaid family and domestic violence leave in a 12-month period, and unpaid community service leave. Okay, this is common knowledge, or should be common knowledge, to small business employers and other employers. So let's talk about casual employees that can request flexible working arrangements and take parental leave. Okay, so they can request that if they have been employed by their employer as a casual on a regular and systematic basis over at least 12 months. Okay, so your casual employees can't request really for flexible work arrangements and unpaid parental leave if they haven't worked with you on an ongoing basis for at least 12 months. They should also have reasonably expect to continue being employed by the employer on a regular and systematic basis. And under certain awards and agreements, casual employees are also paid a casual loading. I mentioned that earlier, or a specific rate of pay. You can use pay and conditions tools in the fairwork.gov.au website to find the minimum award rates for your casuals. Okay. Remember, casuals don't get paid any days off. Notice of termination or redundancy pay, they don't get paid that. They're even work regular hours for a long time. And in some states and territories, long-serving casuals are eligible for long service leave. It is really important that you know what your regulation is, depending on what state you belong to. Okay, so once employed as a casual, an employee will continue to be a casual employee until they become, they get offered a permanent role, or they get a request for a casual conversion and it's accepted and agreed upon, and a full-time or part-time employment is agreed upon on that basis, or you stop being employed by the employer. Okay, so next week, what I'd like to talk about is the regulations on this casual conversion. So this is, how do casual employees become permanent employees, and what are the regulations around that? So more to come next week. So for our viewers, please watch again and tune in for that piece of information. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks very much, Lisa. I do apologise. I am having internet connection issues here today. So I'll just say to the other three of you, if it does stop, can someone please step in? Thank you very much. But Adam, we might go to you now.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. During the last couple of weeks, a number of people have asked me, well, when's the wave coming? You know, when is it actually happening? And interesting statistics that I'm going to share with everyone today are now available. And there you go, just as I thought. It now isn't going to let me do it, even though I practiced it just before we went live. So bear with me just for a moment. But in essence, while I'm getting these statistics up on the screen, I just want to say to everybody, now, hopefully that's working. You need to remember that the best thing to do is not panic. No matter what happens, don't panic. Because when people panic is when those things get into an issue. Now, hopefully that is now on the screen and working. If I can get a thumbs up from someone there. Yep. So companies get placed under attack for a whole host of reasons. It could be a landlord, it could be the bank putting pressure on, it could be the tax office, it could be a bunch of creditors, or it could be one creditor or someone, a supplier that isn't happy. And it could be for a whole host of reasons. It could be because they are insured and so they won't get paid from their insurer until such time as they proceed with a winding up application. The number one thing to do is to get advice from your accountant and your legal advisor. Don't ever think that, oh, well, it's too expensive to talk to my accountant. There are lots of affordable options available that business owners can explore when they're getting good advice. So let's look at some of the statistics. On the screen at the moment is an ASIC statistic chart that's been put in, which is a notification of companies entering an external administration in a 12-month rolling average up until the 4th of April 2021. And you'll see the light blue line is the base level. The middle range blue line is as at the 4th of April 2020. And the 4th of April 2021 is the dark blue line. Now you'll notice that as at April 2020, it is the largest line there. So yes, there is a bit of a lag in terms of the applications and the companies entering into external administration as at the 4th of April. Then we go to the next screen, which is a notification of companies by type. And here's where it's quite interesting. The court winding up is considerably down compared to this time last year. It's only 457. And that's because it's taking a while for the courts to kick in for their applications to wind up. However, in this last week, the amount of applications for court winding up in the New South Wales Supreme Court and in fact in the federal court is the highest it's been in 5 years. So it is starting to happen already. Creditors winding up, this is where company business owners are the ones that are initiating this voluntarily. It's already at 2,471, which is about halfway compared to this time last year. And again, that's because of the moratorium and the slowness of getting it back on board. Bank appointments is around about almost parity. Well, it's a little bit off, but it's not far off it. And so that means banks are still being active with making sure that their exposures are controlled. And of course, voluntary administrations are just under halfway from last year. Now, the new regime of restructuring appointments have only just kicked off, so there's no comparative for that. The next table I'm going to show everyone is the appointments by region. So Lisa must be having a great influence down in South Australia because there's bugger all going on in South Australia, which is evident today anyway. But the New South Wales figures about just under 1,500, so exactly almost half of what this time last year. Victoria are a little bit higher per capita, and Queensland is well below. But it just shows you the spread across the country of people that are finding it too difficult to continue on in business. And the last screen I've got for you is a graph showing you the figures over the course of every week. So ASIC were monitoring during the COVID year, they were monitoring every week who was going into an external administration because they wanted to see what was actually going on during the COVID period. Now, remembering that the moratorium finished on the 31st of December, this graph is still going on, and they're still capturing this data. So the light blue line, which is up the top of the graph on the right-hand side, is the base level. And you'll see there that the dark, the two other blue lines, the one that's in the middle, continues on, and the one that's the darkest actually hasn't been reported. It's been captured, but it hasn't been reported yet. So I think there's a few funny buggers going on there. People not releasing those figures, and I suspect it's because it's actually peaking up. My intelligence from all of my colleagues within the insolvency industry is that the phones are ringing and inquiries are coming in and appointments are being made. So I go back to my first screen again. If at any time you feel that you can't pay all of your debts as and when they fall due, that means as soon as you can't pay one debt, you can't pay all your debts. You need to be talking to your accountant and your legal advisor. You need to be getting good advice about that. When you do your annual returns, you actually have to declare a solvency return each time you do that now. And if you are doing that falsely, you can expose yourself even further. Don't panic though. Make sure that you're taking the time to understand what is actually going on in your business, and look at your cash flows, interrogate them. Don't just trust them just because they're being given to you. Test them. Make sure that you're looking at all of the information that's in there. For example, and here's a classic test for you. If your total receivables, let's say, is $500,000, and if your cash flow doesn't reflect of collecting all of that $500,000 within your payment term period, so if your payment terms are 60 days and you're not collecting $500,000 every 60 days, there's clearly something different there, something wrong. And that means you're cash dry and you're cash poor during that period, and you're going to have a cash deficiency. So I hope that's been helpful. I hope it just illuminates that there is still a bit of a lag with insolvency appointments, which isn't a bad thing, but they are on the rise. And my colleagues within the industry are, certainly talking about the amount of phone calls that they're getting on a weekly basis.
Thank you for that, Adam. And I'm going to step in place of Ian. He has some difficulties with his internet. So he will post his updates on the Facebook page. So then the viewers can still get the value from Ian's contribution today. Now, just before anything else, is there any questions from anyone? Any discussions?
Bring on the budget.
Yes, not long to go.
No, I was going to have questions about the Ian's discussion on further discussion on the grants, but that I think we can do that offline as well, and maybe through the Facebook and LinkedIn pages.
Sure.
But Sam, thank you for organising that. Pardon?
I've got a question for you, Lisa. So obviously you talked about
sure,
some of the rights about the casual workers. But what about when, and I've heard this plenty of times where, casual employees just don't turn up, or they don't feel like it, so they call in sick on the day, or sometimes minutes before the shift is meant to start. What should a business owner do in those occasions?
Well, it's very specific, Sam, depending on what they're doing and how important it is for the business. But typically, because you don't actually have to give a casual employee any notice of termination, if it's repeated that they've done that, I would suggest to think of plan B, which is, well, clearly there is no commitment to honor the work that's been agreed upon. I would terminate the employee and try and look at a replacement straight away. Somebody that doesn't turn up and doesn't give any advice that they're not going to turn up is a classic sign of somebody that probably will not continue to turn up. Now, that doesn't mean that you are not obliged to pay them up to that point, of course, of when they work. So I would immediately look for a replacement and terminate the casual employee. They could do the same to an employer. If they found another role, they could immediately advise that they will not be turning up the next day. So this is the reason why next week when I talk about casual conversions, if there is clearly a pattern of work and a pattern of regular hours over a 12-month period, there's a business case even for small business employers to think, could we get this person on a permanent basis so that there is a commitment on both parties? But I'll talk about that next week.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lisa. And so that brings to an end our session today. So don't forget to check us out on Facebook and LinkedIn at Business Insight. Obviously, Ian will put his details on there as well. You will see this recording on YouTube channel also, if you prefer that. We'll happily answer any questions you have in what we cover off in these areas, if you note them in the chat area in Facebook. So till next time, have a wonderful week, and see you next week.
Have a good week.